Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to start with the first topic of the course, that is Human Anatomy and Physiology 1, that is the Introduction to Human Body. Okay, so these are the contents of my presentation, that is definition and scope of anatomy and physiology. The next is levels of structural organization and body systems. The next is basic life processes, and lastly homeostasis. So this is the book which you will be referring for most of the topics of the anatomy and physiology. So let's start with the first one, that is definition and scope. Okay, so anatomy can be broken up into two, that is ana means up and tomy means, which is a suffix, it is process of cutting. So it is the science of body structures and the relationship among them. So anatomy, it was first studied by dissection. Dissection again can be divided into two parts, that is dis, the is meaning is apart, and the section, it is meaning is act of cutting. It is careful cutting apart of body structures to study their relationship. So anatomy, basically there are two types of anatomy, that is first one is the internal and second one is external. Okay, so in external anatomy means what? If I give you an organ, okay, to study, so without touching that particular organ, whatever you will write as a description, that will become external anatomy of that particular organ. And when you cut the organ into different sections and you describe the structure of that internal parts of that particular organ, it will become internal anatomy of that organ. Okay, so physiology, again it can be broken into two words, that is physio means nature and logy, it is study of. Okay, so it is the science of body functions and how the body parts work. Okay, so you should understand in very simple words, anatomy is study of structure, and physiology, it is study of function. Okay, so when we say scope of anatomy and physiology, the why we need to study anatomy and physiology is that structure and function are so closely related. So we have to learn about human body by studying its anatomy and physiology together. Okay, we cannot separate these two terms, that is anatomy and physiology, as separate. We cannot study them as separate, as the structure is related to the function, or structure depends on the function, or function depends on the structure. Okay, so you will find it very interesting to study the structures of the any organ, and you will be able to correlate the structure of any organ with its function. We cannot separate the functional part of any organ from its structure. Okay, so that's why we have to study the structure and function of any organ to always together. So it will be the structure of this course only, that first of all we will describe the structure, that is the external structure, we call it as the external anatomy, followed by internal structure, which is internal anatomy, followed by the function of that organ. Okay, so when we go in this particular manner, we should be able to know the entire anatomy and physiology of that particular organ. Okay, So the structure of a part of the body often reflects function. Okay. Example is bones of skull joined tightly to form a rigid cage that protects the brain. Okay. So next example is of bones of fingers which are more loosely joined to allow a variety of movements. If you see, it is the structure that is making the difference over here. The bones which form the skull, they are so tightly packed that there is very negligible movement. I'm not saying that there is no movement at all. There is a movement, but it is very negligible movement. Why it is negligible movement? Because the bones that form the skull, they are so closely packed. In in contrast to this, the bones of finger, they are so loosely packed that they allow the movement. Okay, that's how we can move our fingers. Okay, so next is levels of structural organization. So there are six levels of structural organization, or organism is can be divided into six levels of organization. Okay, it is like hierarchy starting from low to high. So this is the low and this is the highest level. Okay, so these are the intermediate level. So the first level we will see in next slide, that is chemical level. So chemical level means what? The our body is made up of atoms and molecules. Two important molecules which form our body. One of it is shown over here. It is DNA. Okay, so our body is made up of atoms and molecules. So which atoms? That is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Okay, so these atoms make up the molecules. Okay, so these molecules, then they combine together to form cell. Okay, you know the cell is basic functional unit of our body. Okay, or then these cells group together with surrounding material to form tissue. Please understand one thing very clearly: the cells which have common functionality, they only group together. It won't happen that the cells with different function, they are coming together and they are forming tissue. It won't happen. Cells with common functionality will come together and will form the tissue. Okay, so next level is a organ level. So different type of tissue come together to form organs. Okay, so before we actually see what is this, I will just elaborate some more about this. In tissue, there are four types of tissue. First one is epithelial tissue, second one is connective tissue, third one is muscle tissue, and fourth one is nervous tissue. Okay, so these various types of tissue will come together to form organ. So examples of organ you already know. One which is already shown over here, it is stomach. Okay, so stomach, it is also an organ. Kidneys are there, then liver is there, brain, heart. All of these are the examples of representative examples of organ. The next is system level. So when organs performing similar effect or similar function, when they come together they form system. Okay, so system consists of related organs with common function. Okay, then a last level of organization is organism level. So all the parts of the human body functioning together constitute the total organism. So when the systems, there are many systems. In total, there are 11 systems in the body. When these 11 systems come together, they lead to the organism level. Okay, so moving next to the next part, that is body systems. So now, as I said, there are 11 systems in the body. So we will just remember, or we'll just name these systems. So the first one is the integumentary system. It is skin and related organs. Okay, so skeletal system, it is skeleton. We are going to study about this system in this semester's anatomy and physiology. The skeletal system will consist of bones. Okay, so next is muscular system. It consists of muscles. Okay, so next is nervous system. It consists of brain and spinal cord. The next is the endocrine system. So it consists of endocrine glands. A representative example of endocrine gland is pituitary gland and the pancreas. So in pancreas also there is it is partly endocrine, partly exocrine. So the endocrine part of the pancreas, one of the most prominent hormones secreted by it is insulin. Okay. The next, cardiovascular system, it consists of blood vessels and heart. Okay, the next is lymphatic system. It consists of, or one more thing which is added over here, it is the immunity. So this is the system which is associated with providing immunity. Immunity is body defense mechanism. Okay, so lymphatic system, it consists of lymph vessels. Okay, it consists of thymus, spleen, etc. Okay, so lymphatic tissues and organs, lymphatic vessels are constituted in lymphatic system. The next is the respiratory system. It consists of lungs, alveoli, bronchioles. Okay, so what function a respiratory system plays? Inspiration and expiration of air. Okay, so the oxygen which we require is inspired using a respiratory system, and the carbon dioxide which is a waste product, it is expired by the respiratory system. So next is digestive system. It consists of GI tract, which consists of small intestine, large intestine, then liver, pancreas, salivary gland, etc., etc. So these liver, pancreas, they are accessory glands. Okay, so they help. Why they are called as accessory? They help in the digestion process. And what is digestion? It is breaking down of complex molecules into simpler molecules with the help of different enzymes. Okay, then urinary system. It consists of kidney, urinary bladder, urethra, etc. Okay, so what is function of urinary system is to excrete the excrete the waste product out of the body. So next is the reproductive system. So again, male reproductive system and female reproductive system we have. So we are going to study in detail about this reproductive system. So this time in this semester you have integumentary system to study. skeletal system you have, muscular system you have, part of nervous system you have, that is peripheral nervous system, then cardiovascular system you have, lymphatic system you have to study. Okay, so all the other systems you are going to study in next semester. So moving forward to basic life processes. So there are six basic life processes. First one is metabolism, second one is responsiveness, third one is movement, fourth one is growth, fifth one is differentiation, and sixth one is reproduction. So metabolism, it is some of all chemical process that occur in the body. Okay, so the chemical process, they are, or they happen in two phases, that is catabolism and anabolism. So what is catabolism? Catabolism is breaking down process, and anabolism is building up. So breaking down means what? By means of catabolism we break down the complex molecules into simple molecules. Okay, so it is breaking down. We break down complex into simple. So opposite is true for the anabolism. It is building up, it is building up the complex molecule from the simpler ones. Okay, so next is the responsiveness. uh, it is the body's ability to detect and respond to the changes. So changes may be internal changes or external changes, and depending on type of changes happen, the body responds to it. Okay, the next is movement. It includes motion of the whole body, individual organs, single cells, or even tiny structure inside the cell. Okay, so when it is not only the motion of the whole body we are talking about, it is even the tiny structure inside the cell. So when movement of ions happen from extracellular space to the intracellular space, it also gets included into this basic life process, that is movement. Next is growth. Growth is increase in body size that results from increase in the size of existing cells and increase in the number of cells, or both. Okay, so it is not always that the cells will increase in size. Sometime the tissues or the organs also increase in size. Okay, so they increase in size because in between the tissue layers there may be accumulation of some material. Okay, so this is mainly observed in case of pathological cases. Pathological cases means in case of diseases. The next basic life process is differentiation. It is nothing but the development of a cell from unspecialized to specialized state. Okay, so example can be given of the mesenchymal cells. Okay, so mesenchymal cells are the undifferentiated cells, and it can give rise to the multiple types of cells. Okay, so these mesenchymal cells can also give rise to the uh, red blood cells, RBCs. Okay, so they are like the stem cells of the body which are undifferentiated. Once they undergo certain process, they get differentiated to form specific types of cells. Okay, so next is reproduction. So reproduction, it refers either to formation of new cells from the for the tissue growth, repair, or replacement, and or second, that is production of new individual. So this reproduction, when we are talking about, It is what we have said, it is formation of new cells. So formation of new cells, you know how it happens. It happens by mitosis. Okay, so when this happens, and in certain type of cells, mitosis is always happening at any time. For example, the cells that line our skin, the mitosis is happening continuously in our skin. Okay, every day dead skin cells are being removed from the topmost layer of the skin, and the in place of those dead skin cells, other skin cells, they occupy that particular space. Okay, so these are the six basic life processes. You can remember these six life processes by code, that is MRMGDR. Okay, so M for metabolism, R for responsiveness, next M for the movement, then G for growth, D for differentiation, and R for reproduction. Okay, so next is homeostasis. So what is homeostasis? It is the condition of equilibrium, please understand, condition of equilibrium in the body's internal environment due to constant interaction of the body's many regulatory processes. So it is nothing but the condition of equilibrium in body's internal environment. So when we say body's internal environment, we are specifically talking about the interstitium, interstitial fluid. It is the internal environment of the body. Okay, so what is interstitium? So you know, if we consider this as the cell, these two are the cells. Okay, so whatever fluid which is present inside the cell, it is intracellular fluid. Whatever fluid which is present outside the cell, it is extracellular fluid. And the fluid which is in between the cell, it is called as the interstitial fluid. Okay, so homeostasis is dynamic condition. Dynamic means it is always changing. So dynamic is opposite of static. Static means stationary, dynamic is moving. Okay, so homeostasis is a dynamic condition. So in a response to changing conditions, body's equilibrium can shift among points in a narrow range that is compatible with maintaining life. Okay, so example of this is blood sugar level. Okay, if you know, if you have read any pathological report of any of the diabetes patient who is there in your surroundings, you may find the blood sugar level is always maintained or is always mentioned in form of range, that is A to B. You won't find absolute value, you will find range. So if the blood sugar level is between 70 to 140, then we can say that the blood sugar level of such patient, it is within normal limits. If it goes below this 70, we can call it is hypoglycemia. If it goes beyond 140, we can call it as hyperglycemia or diabetes. Okay, so important aspects of homeostasis is maintaining the volume and composition of the body fluids, dilute watery solutions. So water body fluids, these are the dilute watery solutions containing dissolved chemicals that are found inside the cells as well as surrounding them. So what is important function of the homeostasis is maintenance of volume and composition of body fluid. So whatever mechanisms are there that maintain the homeostasis, they will serve two purpose. That is, first purpose they will serve is that they will try to maintain the volume of the body fluid at any point of time, and second function or second purpose they will serve is that they will try to maintain the composition of the body fluid, that is inside the cell or outside the cell. So that is the mechanisms by which homeostasis can be maintained, and if it is maintained in such a way, then we can say that equilibrium is attained. So control of homeostasis. So these were the mechanisms I was talking about. So how homeostasis is controlled, how equilibrium is maintained of the internal environment. That is, homeostasis in the body is continually being disturbed. Okay, as I said earlier, homeostasis is dynamic. Okay, dynamic means continuously moving. So as it is continually being disturbed, that's why it is dynamic in nature. So what are the sources of disturbance? That is, first source is external. So what is the external source? If suppose currently there is a winter going on, so the temperature is less at night. But if suppose suddenly the daytime temperature increases, it becomes like a 35 degree centigrade or 40 degree centigrade. So this is the sudden change. So currently we don't sweat out too much, but if temperature increase suddenly, if it goes to like these extreme levels like 35 or 40 degrees centigrade, we start sweating will start. So this is nothing but the disturbance. So this increase in the temperature itself, it is a type of disturbance, and as it is happening external to the body, it is external source of disturbance. The next is internal source of disturbance. Okay, so internal source means what? Example I'll give of the blood pressure. If suddenly uh, you have you are suppose you are assume that you are sleeping and suddenly you wake up. Okay, so when you suddenly wake up and suddenly you start walking, what will happen in that case? Your pressure will drop. Okay, your blood pressure will drop. So this sudden change in the posture, it brought about the change in the blood pressure. So this is nothing but the internal source of disturbance. Okay, suddenly some somewhere in your legs, in your skeletal muscles, a low pressure point is created. So what happened? The uh, it lead to the sudden pressure drop. So it is a internal source of disturbance. So next is psychological stress. Okay, so psychological stress means what? I will give one example. Okay, so currently as we can see that everything is going on online. Okay, your lectures are going on online, then your practicals will be online, and you think that your exams will also be online. But if suppose tomorrow someone came and told you that your this semester's exam will be in conducted in offline mode. Okay, so when someone said that your exams will be in offline mode, it will give you stress, it will create kind of stress. And because of this psychological stress, because of fear or that anxiety of those enzymes, you there will be disturbance in the homeostasis. Okay, a lot of things will happen. your palms will start sweating. Okay, so this is also nothing but source of disturbance. So mechanisms by which body bring back internal environment back into balance, it is known as feedback system. Mostly endocrine and nervous system work together or independently provide corrective measures. So what are the secretions of endocrine are called? They are called as hormones. And for nervous system, they are neurotransmitters. Okay, so these two, that is hormones and neurotransmitters, are usually involved in maintenance of homeostasis condition. Okay, so hormones, they are slow acting, and neurotransmitter, they are fast acting. Okay, so whatever change hormones bring about, it is very slow. The change that happens, it happens in slow manner. But in case of neurotransmitter, the change they bring about, it is fast, as they act fastly. Okay, so next is feedback system and its components. So a feedback system or a feedback loop is a cycle of events in which status of body condition is monitored, evaluated, changed, remonitored, re-evaluated, and so on. Okay, so understand this thing, that is what feedback system does, is that it is cycle of events. You understand the cycle. So it is A to B, B to C, C to D, and again D to A. So it is cycle of events. So what it does, it status of the body condition is monitored, evaluated, and changed. Okay, so as homeostasis is dynamic, continuous changes are happening in the homeostasis of the body, and that's why continuous monitoring of the homeostatic condition is required. So once monitoring is carried out, the while monitoring, the conditions are being evaluated. So after evaluation, if it is found that there is a change in the condition, then required changes are done in order to bring back that condition into equilibrium. So each monitored variable, it is called as controlled condition. Okay, so any disruption that changes a control condition is called as stimulus. Okay, so control condition is monitored variable, and the disruption uh, causing thing is called as stimulus. Okay, so monitored variable example can be given of blood pressure, temperature, sugar level, etc. Okay, so anything that causes change in the sugar level, it is stimulus. Okay, so stimulus can be anything like you having lunch. Okay, lunch full of sweets, you ate like 12 gulab jamuns in lunch. Okay, please only assume that you have ate 12 gulab jamuns. So this will act as stimulus. Okay, so in this case, sugar level will increase. So as the sugar level is increased, so evaluation is being done by our body mechanisms, and the increased sugar level will be brought to the normal by feedback mechanism. Okay, so feedback mechanism will bring back the increased sugar level back to the normal by certain mechanisms. So what are those mechanisms that we will be studying in each and every chapter which we are going to study under human anatomy and physiology? Okay, so components of feedback system. So there are three components. First is receptor, second is control center, and third one is effector. So what is a receptor? Receptor is a body structure that monitors changes in a control condition and sends input to control center. Okay, so receptor is nothing but the sensing element of the cells that monitors that particular whatever changes that are happening in the internal environment, and once they monitor, they send the changes that is happening in the internal environment as the input to the control center. So what is control center? Control center in the body, for example the brain, sets the range of values within which a control condition should be maintained, evaluates the input it receives from the receptor, and generates output commands when they are needed. So what is control center? Control center, as the name suggests, it controls the certain these control conditions. Okay, these control conditions are why they are called as control conditions, because these conditions like a temperature, they are to be maintained in uh, certain ranges, like 35 to 39 degrees centigrade. Okay, so body tries to maintain the. So if we see over here, the usual body temperature is 37 degrees centigrade. Okay, so in case of summer season, it may go up to the value that is 39 degrees centigrade, and in case of winter season, it may go up to the value of 35, or it can go below also. So if the temperature values, if they go above this value that is 39 degrees centigrade, if they go below this value that is 35 degrees centigrade, the control center, that is brain, will take up, it will evaluate the situation and will take appropriate decision, and will produce an output in the form of nerve impulse, and it will send it to the effector organ. So effector organ, it is a body structure that receives output from the control center and produces a response or effect that changes the control condition. Okay, so it is nothing but a body structure. It receives output from the control center and produces the response. Okay, so here you can see the control condition, it can be anything. So stimulus, it disturbs homeostasis by increasing or decreasing a control condition. So this control condition is being monitored by the receptors. So once there is some change happens in the control condition, receptors sense that particular change, and they, once they sense the change, they give the input to the control center, and the input is the nerve impulse or the chemical signals. Okay, so once these nerve impulse or chemical signal reaches to the control center evaluates that particular input that is received from the receptor. Once it evaluates that input, it produces the output, and this output is in the form of nerve impulse or chemical signals. So this nerve impulse and chemical signal as the form of output are sent to the effector organs. So this effector organ, uh, once they receive output from the control center, it bring about a change or a response that alters the control condition. So this response which is given out by the effector, it causes control condition to return to the homeostasis when the response brings the control condition back to the normal. So what is function of this response is to bring back the change that happened in the control center because of the stimulus. So कंट्रोल कंडिशन मध्ये जो काही चेंज स्टिम्युलस मुळे आलेला आहे तो परत टू द नॉर्मल is brought about by the response which is given out by the effector organ. Okay, so there are two types of feedback system. That is, first one is negative feedback, and why we are studying negative feedback system first is because it is the most common one. Okay, and the second one is positive feedback system. So negative feedback system, what it does, it reverses a change in the control condition. Okay, so it reverses the change. So stimulus causes, with the example of this or with this diagram we will understand what I am saying exactly. Stimulus, it disrupts homeostasis by increasing control condition. Over here the control condition is blood pressure. Okay, so there is one receptor in the blood vessel wall that is called as baroreceptor. This receptor monitors the blood pressure. So this change in the blood pressure is sensed by the baroreceptor in certain blood vessel. So they give out input to the control center, that is brain. Okay, so they give out input to the control center in the form of nerve impulse. So once the input reaches to the brain, brain evaluates this input, and brain comes to know after evaluation that blood pressure is increased. So in order to decrease the blood pressure or bring back blood pressure to the normal levels, blood brain will give out output in the form of nerve impulse. So it will give out output to the heart and also to the blood vessel. So here this heart and the blood vessel, they are nothing but the effector organs. So what response is produced by these effector organs is that in case of heart there will be decrease in heart rate, and in case of blood vessels there will be dilation of the blood vessels. Because of these two things, that is decrease in heart rate and dilation of blood vessel, it will cause blood pressure to decrease or drop. So as the blood pressure is decreased, the blood pressure which is a control condition, it returns to the homeostasis when the response brings back the blood pressure back to normal. So please understand, over here stimulus increased blood pressure, so the response given out, it decreased the blood pressure. Okay, so if you see, in case of negative feedback, whatever done by the stimulus, that is increase in blood pressure, exactly opposite of it is done by the response given out by the effector organ. Please understand this very clearly, that that's why this is called as negative. Okay, it negates the change that is carried out by the stimulus in the control condition. Negates means what? It reverses a change in a control condition. Okay, that's why it is negative feedback system. Okay, now next one is positive feedback system. It is exactly opposite to that of negative feedback system. In case of positive feedback system, it tends to strengthen or reinforce change in one of the body's control condition. Okay, so with this example uh, we will explain. Okay, so example is of childbirth. In childbirth, what happens? Contractions of the wall of the uterus force the baby's head or body into the cervix. Okay, so now we are talking about childbirth, and the at the time of childbirth, the head or body, it puts the pressure onto the walls of uterus. It causes or it increases the stretching of the cervix start stretching. Okay, so this is sensed by the receptors. Which receptors? That is stretch sensitive nerve cells in the cervix. Okay, they are there that feel the stretch that is present in the cervix. Okay, so once they feel that there is stretch is increasing in the cervix, what they will do? They will provide input in the form of nerve impulses to the control center, that is brain. Okay, so once they provide input to the brain will evaluate the input and provide output in form of one hormone that is called as oxytocin. So what is oxytocin and what function it does? Oxytocin is a type of hormone produced or released by the pituitary gland. Okay, so this oxytocin will act on effector. So which is the effector? That is muscles in the wall of uterus. And what response is produced by the muscle in the wall of uterus in response to the oxytocin? Is that they contract more forcefully. What was the change over here? It is, or what was the stimulus? It is contraction of the wall of uterus. And what response is being produced is the again contraction. So if you can see, stimulus causing contraction, and here response which is produced by the effector organ also causing contraction. So contraction becomes multiple fold times, it increases. So what is the response over here? Baby's body stretches the cervix more. Okay, so this particular response increases stretching of the cervix, causes the release of more oxytocin, which results in more stretching of the cervix. Okay, so here now we will try to correlate this example with this, that positive feedback system tends to strengthen or reinforce change. Okay, in earlier, in negative, the change was being reversed, but instead of the reversal of change, in positive feedback system, the change that happened in the control condition, it is being strengthened. Okay, so in positive feedback system, the response affects the control condition differently than in a negative feedback system. Okay, so the control center still provides commands to the effector, but this time effector produces physiological response that adds to or reinforces initial change in the control condition. So the it is one and the same thing. Okay, we are saying the same thing. Okay, so the response whatever produced by the effector organs already it reinforces the change that is already happened due to the stimulus. Okay, so action of a positive feedback system continues until it is interrupted by some mechanism. So in this case, interruption of the cycle happens by birth of the baby, and as the birth of the baby happens, it decreases the stretching of the cervix, thus breaking the positive feedback cycle. So once baby is born, there is no more stretching of the cervix, and as there is no more stretching of the cervix, no more input provided by the receptor to the control center, so there is no more output provided to the effector and no more release of oxytocin. Okay, so that's how this particular cycle is broken. Okay, so that's all for the first topic. So herewith we have finished the first topic, that is introduction to human body.